And your words provide a bridge. It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Yeah, well, there's lots that popped into my mind that I want to comment on, and I probably won't be able to remember them all, but just on what you've just been saying. But one that's there is that anybody can do this. Any of your listeners can awaken to who they truly are, simply. Why can they do that? Because they already are who they really are. That's the beautiful. You talked about the frameworks, the conceptual frameworks we have about things, and in the world of spirituality, the conceptual world, dare I say it, of spirituality, there's so many myths, and so many of them are getting in the way, actually, of our experiencing the essence of who we truly are, because they're setting in mind conceptual frameworks which are we're trying to jiggle our experience and make it fit what we think is true about spirituality. Forget about what you've ever heard about spirituality and question your thoughts and be who you are. You are already who you are, and so it's simple, and there's nothing could be more natural for you than for you to awake up to this connected mode of consciousness that you are, this peace-filled presence that is your essential nature. You are it now, and it's simple. You don't have to fix anything about yourself. You don't have to develop anything about yourself. You are already this, and I show you in very simple ways in the book how to, even to say experience that is a bit misleading, because if I start talking about experiencing the essence of who I am, well, there's two of me, right? There's me and there's this thing that I'm experiencing. But in the experience of this, in the awakening of this, awakening is a better word because it kind of gets around that duality trap, which is all just part of having to think about it and talk about it with a conceptual mind. In the actuality of it, you're not experiencing something. You are having this beingness, this more essential and more real and more true beingness of your own nature. Now, I want to pick up on another word that you mentioned, Marie, the higher self. Now, so conceptually, we can think of it, I have a higher self. But I want to encourage your listeners to turn that on its head. Because the only real you is this higher self, or is this self with a capital S. That is you, and you are already that. You don't need to try and find your higher self. I used to joke with some friends, in the past about this idea of the higher self. Well, now how high is the damn thing? This higher self, and can I ever reach it? You don't never ever need to try and reach the higher self. You are the higher self. It's this other conceptual self-identity. That's the imposter, that's the illusion, or that's the tricky bit, So if you want to think about the various parts of yourself, and there's only one ultimately part of yourself, that's this big S self, that's this higher self, that's the presence, the awareness that is your real nature, the real you. The conceptual or the self-image or the self-concept or the conditioned view or perception of who you are is not real. Now, as I said before, to some extent, we still need this to be in the world. And I'm Andrew Seaton. I've got a pink shirt on today. And, last year I did this and I went to visit such and such a person. Okay, so I'm this individual in the world of form. And so it's appropriate then to identify me as an individual. We talk about oneness. Okay, we're oneness, but we're also two-ness. We're also multiplicity. The essential reality is the oneness, but we're in the world of form, an expression of oneness as an individuality. And so, yes, it's okay to have certain thoughts about being, I'm this person, and last year I studied this, and, next year I have a plan to do such and such. That's all fine, so long as we don't get identified with those thoughts about who we are and see them as being the primary reality of who we are, because they're not. They're just part of the play of life in this world of form that come and go. They're changeable. They're not ultimately what's real. So don't think of yourself any longer, I would suggest, as having a higher self, and I hope to cultivate it and check in with it more often and this sort of stuff. You are that self. That's the reality of you. If you've got to think of yourself as having these two kind of components, then think of yourself, occasionally I'm noticing that my conditioned self is popping up here and saying such and such, but do it from your orientation, your point of reference being the authentic self that you are. And if there's something else to refer to, it's this conceptual self or my self-image. I can see that there's a habit of thinking of myself in certain ways that's just popping up here. Be the observer of that rather than being that conditioned notion of yourself, thinking one day I'm going to get aligned with and in harmony with my higher self. No, the higher self's not there. That's you now.
That's such a brilliant thing to distinguish. And again, like you're giving such a language back to all of us. And, you know, wherever we are in the spiritual path, reintegrating with this authentic self, this presence inside us, it helps to have that that shift in perception where we are, the awareness, and these other aspects of us are these, you know, whether it's the lower self or the conditioned self or the ego self or whatever, these are the little things that sprinkle through our experience, but we can more and more be that, have that awareness and that witness observer presence inside ourselves that's looking through the lens of that all-knowing beingness that we truly are. And it's extraordinary.